YOLO Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be looking at the workflow of phase plant. I figure the best way to get going is just to make some patches with you real quick. So let's go ahead, make some patches. Also talk a little bit about the signal flow. So let's also do a quick overview of what we've got in front of us. So for a one-page synthesizer, it's probably the most well thought out one page ever, just as far as how straightforward this is. So you've got your generators, your effects, your modulators, and then all these extra controls are just master controls for the entire synth. This one helps us talk about what we're doing with our effects, like how we're treating them. And we've also got some macro knobs up here. These can be connected to anything and we can turn them and set up some pretty cool combinations. So let's go ahead. Let's just get started by loading up a generator. So naturally we want to generate a sound. I'm going to load up an analog generator. There's a bunch in here though. You just click and you see this menu pop up with all these things. And so, okay, we've got a sawtooth wave, and if we play it, we've already got sound. If you don't have a keyboard down here and you want this keyboard, you just click this little keyboard button down here. And we've already got sound going, but we've noticed a couple other things loaded. This thing called group loaded, and if I click it, I can actually name it. So we'll call this one our first group. And okay, so we've got this. We've also got, it looks like an envelope generator, but it's also called the output module. If we come in here, it's called output. And this allows us to, for example, we could fade our sound in and change, like maybe we want it to fade in like that. Okay, and we see that we have a send to and a gain knob. So, okay, what is this? So we have this arrow here, and this arrow says, hey, take the output of this analog and send it into this output module. And then once it's in the output module, send that, we see this arrow, to the effects. Where to the effects? Send it to lane 1. So here's the lane 1, so it's going to lane 1. Now you see all three lanes sort of turn on. We will talk about that in just a second. But just so you know, it's going to lane 1. Like if I were to send it to lane 2, it skips lane 1. So we can see here, oh, okay, so that's how that works. We can choose where we send it. So all right, we have this going on. Now let me ask you a question. If I move this analog down, what is going to happen signal-wise? Will we still have sound? So let's do it. And we see here this turned red. It's complaining because look at this. There's no arrows coming out of this now. Now it's saying there's nothing coming in. So if I play notes, you see I'm playing notes, nothing's going out. And that's because nothing's coming into the output module. If you're new, this might be a little bit baffling. Like you might be going, why would you be able to do this? The reason is modulation. So, okay, here's our sound. But oftentimes sounds benefit by having other sounds modulate them. I'm not going to be diving into modulation in this video because it is quite the topic. But let's go ahead and just load up another analog. And we notice this time a group does not load and an output does not load. It just loads up by itself, all by its lonesome. Let's go ahead and take this, and we see we will not hear this because there's no arrows coming out of here, but we have this plus icon. Actually, it appears on all of them. And if I click it, what this says is I can take this signal and use it to control something else. So when this is high, it'll turn it up, and when this is low, you see how it's negative right here, it'll be down. And so this can be really cool. This is what we call modulation. And I'm going to go ahead and use it to modulate the level. This is called amplitude modulation. And if I play a note now, we won't hear this guy directly, but we'll hear his effect on this waveform. Let's also go ahead and take the attack back down. I made that a little short. And so let's go ahead and turn the modulation up. Now you can do it a couple ways. You could click on this green one right here, or if you come over here, you can actually directly click on it. And to make it more interesting, because right now, you know, that doesn't sound all that exciting quite yet. Let's change the semitone that this waveform's at. So this would be at a different note. Like if I go up one semitone, it's going to change the note that's being played. Like if I do it here, we're going to start getting some really cool effects. But when we do it here, we're going to get a very different effect because we're not hearing this one directly. We're hearing its effect. So let's go ahead. Let's turn this one up to 1. That's what we get. 2. Now I'm going to go right up to 5. You might be going, why 5? Well, if we start at C, like here's C, and go all the way up to 5 semitones, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we are at a perfect fourth, which has a really special harmonic relationship, but I'm not going to dive into that right now. Just so you know, that's why 5 is sort of special. It sounds nice. You see, if we go to like 3 or 4, for example, it sounds less nice. It has to do with the harmonic relationship. We'll dive into it some other day. But anyways, we've got a cool texture now. So I'm going to stop there with the generator section. There's more we could certainly talk about, but I'm going to just call it good right there. You see, there's lots of possibilities. Try dragging these over to a bunch of things, really screwing with them. And I'm going to set up a macro real quick. So on this macro, I want to control the sync on our saw wave oscillator here. So I'm going to go ahead and just click the plus. Now these ones are orange, and you don't actually hear these. You hear their effects, right? They just turn knobs up and down. So very similar to the green, I'm just going to click and drag. And now if I click away, I can see the orange appear. I really like this orange. I wish there was more orange. It's a tasteful amount of orange. And we can see the effect begin to occur. So if I play a note. So I think that could be kind of a cool thing to have happen. We could also use the mod wheel for that. That might actually make more sense. Get our mod wheel going here. So let's do that too. Now you see this yellow icon? We'll talk about that some other day. But just so you know, you can use this similar to Massive, how you can have modulation, control modulation. It's a kind of a similar deal here. So now if I move my mod wheel, this is a little more expressively useful. Cool. So let's go ahead and move over to the effects. So we've got an idea of the signal routing here. Now, when we come into the lanes, we have 3 effect lanes. If we click, we have all these effects we can do. I think there's a couple in here that are pretty interesting that I'm going to grab. The first one's a comb filter. I think this could sound pretty cool. Now, the way this works is we're sending to lane 1, as we see here. But lane 1, if we come down, it's going to hit the comb filter. And then it's going to come out. We have a mix knob, which allows us to basically treat these as parallel lanes. So you can turn these on and off as if they were in parallel. But then it sends to lane 2. So then lane 2 gets it and does stuff with it. And then after lane 2 is done, then it sends to lane 3. And lane 3 goes out the master where you hear it directly. So if we have like there's our master fader. You double click to reset it. So hopefully you get the idea. It's like one big snake. And what was weird to me at first, if you do know a bit more, these are like in parallel in series at the same time. It kind of like blew my mind. Also, this down with the cross looks kind of like a face. I keep seeing a face every time I look at it. But anyways, that was a weird aside. So we're going into a comb filter. Comb filter is pretty cool. We're not going to be talking specifically about what the effects do here. But we've got it, and we understand that it's going in, and then it comes up to lane 2 and goes through that, and up to lane 3 and goes through that when it goes out. And it'd be cool, I think, to have this comb filter move around, right? That's a pretty cool effect right there. So what I'm thinking is we could control this with some sort of slow oscillating thing, also known as a low frequency oscillator or an LFO. So if we come into the modulators down here, we can load one of those up. So we see we have an envelope, random, all these different options, some MIDI things, pretty cool. I'm gonna go to LFO. And now with our LFO, we've already got it working. I'm not going to dive super big into modulators. This is just where you load them up. I'm going to click this plus icon. It's a controller signal, so it appears orange. And I'm going to go ahead and attach that. And we see the orange power begin to take effect, and it moves it around. That's a bit fast, so I'm going to slow it down a bit. Maybe down to like that. And I'm also going to dial back the range that it can mess around with. Something like that. That's pretty cool. Very beefy. All right, so now that we've got that going on, I think a distortion could be pretty cool. Now, you might have noticed if you click over here, there was a distortion in here. These distortions and filters have some pretty cool roles they can play because they can wind up in the middle of these chains with modulation happening, and that can really change the sound. We're not going to do that today, just as a reference of possible reasons they're there. Let's go ahead and go to lane 2. And on this one, I'm thinking, hey, it's pretty straightforward right now. I think it'd be kind of cool to have like a chorusy kind of effect. And they have a chorus in here, but I'm going to go to a ensemble one. This is a newer module, and I really like the sound that this has. Of course, I'm going to dial back the detune a bit and the spread. I'm also going to make the motion random and bring the mix back until I have a certain amount of that smoothness mixed with that forward grittiness that I had earlier. So I kind of like that. Whoops, that double click gets me when I'm adjusting things. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to slap a distortion somewhere in the middle here. So I'm going to try it before first. So in here we've got, where are you? Distortion. So let's go ahead, let's try out a couple different distortion types. Now we're getting a bit loud here. Let's turn that down. What would be really cool, yeah, I probably shouldn't mention feature ideas here, but automatic gain compensation on some of these would be so cool to have. But anyways, there we go. We've got it. Maybe it's there and I just don't know. I don't know. That tends to happen to me. I jump the gun too fast sometimes. Okay, so we have our distortion all set up. Let's try it afterwards, just see what we get. I like them both. They're both pretty cool sounding. I think I like this one more because it sort of brings out the motion our LFO brings to the table. And we're going to call that good for the effects. We can minimize our effects here as such. And you can actually, if you click this little down arrow, you can have like your own presets and whatnot and do some cool things there if you want. And okay, so we've got our effects, we've got our modulation, and we've pretty much got a patch. I mean, at this point, we can do all sorts of cool things. If we try it out with our screech thing here, my microphone's a bit in the way. Now, this patch probably doesn't sound too great with two notes at the same time. Maybe fifths, but any sort of a third, no, that's not that great. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make this a monophonic patch. So I'm going to come down and take the polyphony down to 1. This just means that only one voice can be active. I'm going to move it to legato. So with one voice and legato on, we get this kind of a sound. It just makes more sense as a behavior to have that. Let's try it out with our screeching. Very uncomfortable, this setup. I need to rethink where my microphone's at. Anyways, if you have any questions about this, let me know. That's just a general overview, some potential options here. You see, with just a few things, we can get a pretty dang cool sound going. Subscribe and have a blessed day.